He graduated recently from Azim Premji University with BA Honors in Humanities. He has also attended multiple debate competitions and MUNs and used to hold debate clubs in our school during his time here. And this has helped bring the talent of public speaking among young students. So now we can move on to the debate session. So I call upon chest number 1, speaker A, Bhavya RP, to present their speech.
Yes. So, torture, the inner criminal, not the outer innocence. Conveying a warm morning to our honored judges and my fellow debaters. It is indeed my pleasure to share a few moments with you, pointing out why I justify the torture performed by government in the name of national security. What all aspects come under national security? Let's deal with the first and the biggest threat that our nation is facing, women's safety. Soumya murder case, Jisha murder case, Nirbhaya murder case, and so on goes the list of brutal rape cases in which the convicted ones deserve the death at the gallows. This is the death of the gallows is the most perfect kind of a punishment that you can give to such kind of criminals. Even if our day-to-day moments are taken into consideration, the immediate action of any woman against some suspected action of assault is the use of pepper spray. This very much brings out the need of torture as a very effective instrument in escaping danger. Torture is an inevitable aspect that hides behind any successful story. Another important aspect of national security is the prevention of crimes, of course. Torture also serves as a lesson. The torturous punishments given to the criminals threatening the national security indeed reduces the crime rates because of the fear of pain. Leave them without a punishment and you're allowing the crime rates to increase. I would really love to just give out an example on how teachers used to behave with students, but now the teachers are really scared to put up their voice against them. Why not give the nation the right to punish the convicted? So torture is a very good instrument. I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you for the listeners.
The floor is now open for rebuttal. Fellow participants can ask questions on what Bhavya RP just finished. Judges, do you have any questions?
No, I'd actually really like to. No, I think there are hands raised in the.
Yes, Rohan, you may go ahead.
The speaker mentioned that deterrence of violent crime is a possible consequence of harsh punishment, but it has been scientifically proven that that is a myth and it's not a thing, considering the fact that social conditions and conditioning are the reasons for crime. So punishment would really not deter crime in any meaningful way, and it's been proven that way by scientific studies.
So do you actually? Yes, please.
How is that point still justified, considering that it's all been proven?
Well, actually, punishment is very much reserved by any criminal. Any kind of punishment is needed. But in my case, as far as my point is considered, torture is very effective because just consider someone just advising someone, and that more or less just travels through one ear and exits through the other, which is more effective. And also, this is a very good model for other citizens of the nation as well. It just prevents them from going into such kind of criminal deeds. I hope your question is answered.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question to that one. So are you equating torture to punishment and recommending that as a source that all citizens of India must take up?
Torture could be a punishment actually, but torture doesn't necessarily mean any physical abuse. It could be mental, but any kind of torture in case of words or as a physical abuse is very much effective, because rather than just advising and giving words on what one should do or what one should not do, giving an actual experience on what he did wrong is very much effective than words.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the first rebuttal session. Now I call upon speaker B, Shreya Anil, to deliver her speech.
Good morning, respected panel judges and my fellow debaters. Today, I am here to speak against the topic, is torture justified when it is used by governments in the name of national security? Let me begin by telling that we live in a country which has gained its independence by following the principles of non-violence and ahimsa. We live in a world where there is strong opposition against the torture and the non-violence which has been meted out to the refugees, including the Rohingyas of Myanmar, the people belonging to Sri Lanka right from the Sri Lankan Civil War, and the Uyghurs of China. We live in a world which is dominated by conventions, right from the Geneva Convention to the United Nations Convention against torture, which clearly condemns all activities and practices which promote torture. So I cite this as the very first reason why I tell that torture cannot be justified, even if it is done in the name of national security. Now let us take an example where torture is used by governments, mainly for two purposes. One, as an interrogative tool, and the second is a tool of punishment. In the first case, when they use it to question people, to understand if they are criminals or if they are innocent people, sadly, about 98% of the people, even if they are innocent, they'll agree that they've committed the crime because of the fear, because of the sake of being released from the torture. In the second case, suppose the law grants me the power and the authority to punish a person by torturing him, obviously for a crime that he has committed and torturing another person. So by the same law which defines that correct, shouldn't I also be tortured by a third person because I'm torturing this person and committing a crime thereby? So the very answer to this question proves that torture cannot be used as a tool for any purpose, be it for national security, be it for justice, but for any purpose. And I'd like to say that anything which harms humanity cannot be considered as a justifiable tool. And so I would like to conclude my speech by quoting Mahatma Gandhi when he said that non-violence is the mightiest tool which is devised by man, which is even more mighty than the mightiest tool of destruction which has been devised by the ingenuity of man. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya. Now we'll have the rebuttal session.
Yeah, so my name is Advaith, and I'm talking for the topic. So you said that torture cannot be justified if it's in the name of national security. So my question is, what if the lives of millions of innocent people are at risk? Many innocent people lives are at risk right now, and a person has a sort of information that might be valid to save those innocent people, but he is not disclosing it. So what will be your method of interrogation other than torture? He's not disclosing it when all other moral things are considered. He's not disclosing the information. What will be your method of interrogation?
So the first thing that I would say that this person is only a suspect. You are not sure if he's actually behind this. So the second thing is that it was a very old practice to commit to physical abuse, and then we expect that he'll just reveal whatever he has in mind. But if it is a terrorist, we know that terrorists commit suicide by any form. They are ready to bear any form of violence if their intention is pure. So we cannot guarantee that just because subjecting them to torture, they can reveal whatever is there in their mind. There's no guarantee for that. So that doesn't give a person the license to do physical abuse and to torture another person in the name of anything, in the name of the life of thousands of people.
Yeah, I'm just going to counter that. So you are willing to risk the lives of millions of people by basing on a what if. What if he's innocent? You're basing it on it. So millions of innocent people are going to be dead. So you're risking it on what if. I don't think that's a good explanation for it.
We are very well aware of several facts and several incidents which has happened in India itself, whereby people have been tortured for even 7 or 10 years continuously. And then at the end, we come to realize it is, and then we know about people coming to apologize to the family of the person who has been tortured. It is true that lives of millions are at risk, but I would prefer that any other form of questioning or any other form of extracting the answer could be used other than torture, because
that's my question. What is the another method?
Okay, thank you. We have somebody else, but thank you though. That is valuable.
Okay, thank you.
Short. Aditya, you had a question.
Yeah, so right now, and before you mentioned about certain governments doing torture on the people. So here I would like to ask you, So you mentioned India here too. India is a democratic country, and you're free to elect your own leaders, your own people who control everything. So why don't people elect a government that does not do torture if they could do that? It's available here. You can do it free. You can elect for anyone you want, and you can yourself stand for election to prevent this from happening. And the same thing, and for the same reason, another question I have along with this is that other countries, like if you give North Korea or Russia, they don't not Russia or Afghanistan or Taliban, they don't protect the national security of their own people. They're failed nations. You can't give their example here as torture. Democratic nations like India or USA, you have the option to elect your own leaders who can control this. And if why didn't you elect such people who don't do this kind of torture, that you don't want? Or you could have stood an election and you could have done the same thing, or anyone could have done the same thing if they were against it.
To answer your question, first, I can't cite the example of countries which use torture like Afghanistan, because the topic that I'm asked to speak about is about the countries in the world which use torture. So just because they are being justified, and just because it is something that is not there to control them, it doesn't mean that they are justified in using torture. And the second part of your question, there is a certain amount of, we live in a democracy, and the principles of democracy itself allows us the power to elect our own representatives. So that power itself, that answers a very question that we can elect representatives who doesn't torture people. So, but there is certain amount of confusion whether, the representatives, they will use forms of abuse. That is why we have laws in the country. We can establish laws which clearly doesn't allow any forms of abuse, which clearly punishes the people, not by abuse, but by other forms which can be considered justifiable. So,
Okay.
torture.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we're just running a little bit time, I think. Jonathan, is that right?
Yeah, it was 1 minute late.
Yeah, so we can move on, but as a future thing, try to make sure that, like, you give ample time for the responder to also answer back, right? Try to make your questions concise if it's possible. But thank you. Excellent questions. So please.
Judges, please note that was the end of chess number 1, speaker A and B. Now we will be moving on to chess number 2, speaker A, Mohsina Fatima.
I was called a traitor. This was said by Asif Iqbal Tanha, an Indian activist, when he was asked about being imprisoned under UAPA. Hello and good morning. My name is Mohsina Fatima. I am from St. Thomas Residential School. I'm here to voice out my opinion that torture is not justified when performed by government in the name of national security. On 17th May 2020, Asif was arrested by Delhi police for protesting against Citizenship Amendment Act under UAPA. While granting him bail, the Delhi High Court noted that the state blurred the line between the right to protest and terrorist activity in its anxiety to suppress the protest. I believe that his arrest was aimed at suppressing the voice of those who dared to question by torturing them mentally. We all need safety from violence and terrorism, but no government should sacrifice people's human rights in the name of national security. During the 2011 uprising in Egypt, torture was used as a weapon against protesters. Torture took the form of strip searches and virginity tests for a group of 18 detained women. Such acts, which is aimed at crushing the voices of the people, is nothing but an utter disgrace to the entire human race. We need to understand that glorifying the use of torture technique and using it for the selfish needs of the people has to be stopped. So I would like to end my speech by quoting Gandhiji. You can chain me, you can torture me, you can even destroy my body, but you can never imprison my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohsina. Now we'll move on to the rebuttal session.
A small doubt, the chess number A should be talking for the topic or against the topic?
Against.
Actually, yeah.
For the chess number 1, both the teams, it was A did 4, B did against, but just keep track of that because it is pretty obvious when the person says it up front. Mohsina just spoke against the topic, if that was not clear. Any questions?
Yes, please. I'm Havya. I would like to ask a question on your point that you said the government blurred out the line between protection of rights and terrorist activity. So, as far as my point is considered, the terrorist activity, the word terrorism, that doesn't really exist in a democratic country. You just don't terrorize people to just tell the truth. The word torture cannot decipher into terrorism. Why would you connect both of those terms?
In this specific case, he is considered to be a terrorist, and he was accused under UAPA. That is why I said the term.
So just he was considered as a terrorist. So so doesn't it mean that he should get something like a terrorist punishment?
No, he was protesting again. He was exercising his right. He was protesting against the CAA. He was exercising his right to talk freely. It was his right to speak, and the government, using their selfish needs, was accusing him of being against the government and the country. That is why it is absolutely wrong.
So what kind of terrorist activity was done to this person who tried to voice his rights?
I'm sorry, Bhavya, but can we have someone else asking a question if
sure.
there's anyone available?
Thank you.
Okay, if nobody has a question, I have a question. So the example that you used was like in response to people being detained as a result of protesting and things like that. What about in a question that like Advait asked, which is, let's say that torturing somebody leads to the direct saving of 100 lives, because let's say in this example, this is a man who's accused of being a terrorist, and he is actually a part of a team that has put a bomb somewhere, and we have to torture him. What would your response to that?
Well, in such a situation, I think that he should be asked if a person, if there is evidence that he is a criminal and he is a potential threat, I think that he should be tortured. I believe that glorifying torture techniques and using it for the selfish needs of the government is the thing that has to be stopped. But everything has a good or a bad side. And in that such specific situation, we have to torture him if there is evidence that he is indeed a criminal and he is a threat to the nation. And if we can save thousands of lives, we have to do it.
So just to justify, torture is fine for national security sometimes.
Yes, it is when it is a good thing.
Okay, thank you. I think somebody else had a question, a quick question, if that's possible.
My question was a similar thing. It was Vishwa regarding the same terrorism thing that you asked earlier. So.
What? Can you repeat?
No, it was the same question that Hafiz Cheta, you had asked before this thing.
Yeah.
So I don't have a question right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Do any other participants have questions? Now we'll be moving on to chess number 2, speaker B, Kavya Anu.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Kavya Anu from St. Thomas Residential School, here to speak for the topic that is torture is justified when performed by governments in the name of national security. Good morning to all the respected judges and my dear debaters. For any government or state ensuring national security and public safety of its citizens, it is a direct responsibility, and these are prioritized over everything else. And when specific situations arise which hinders the national security, torture can be justified. Torture is justified when the lives of hundreds of innocent people are involved with it. And we all know very well about the increase of terrorism throughout the years and how immoral terrorists are. Several attacks have taken place at several places, and one of the biggest examples is the 9/11 incident. And even during the 9/11 incident, George Bush conducted an enhanced interrogation in which torture was involved. Such situations which require immediate actions will use torture, and immediate action during the situations can only be taken by torturing the suspects to get information. If the topic of peace is brought up against torture, we wouldn't even have military and high-grade weapons if everyone's goal or every country's goal was peace. And Pew Research Center in 2016 conducted a research and more than half of the people who participated in this supported the use of torture for anti-terrorist activities. And even the people who did not support torture for the cause did not completely support the idea of torture being illegal or being banned. One of the major points that is brought up against torture for national security is the topic of moral. So what is actually morally correct? Moral is nothing but a human concept, and what yields maximum pleasure to maximum number of people is what is considered as moral. So if a suspect has critical information that if attained can reduce the suffering of countless innocent civilians, then implementing torture is the moral way. And it was for the sole purpose of obtaining information for the public well-being. Many other examples like the trolley problem or time-taking situations can be used. And during real time-taking, actual time-taking situations, any law enforcement authority, even the ones that denounce violence, will torture to get information. To conclude, I have to say that torture is a necessary evil to protect ourselves and our national interest. If torturing a suspect benefits or saves the lives of thousands of innocent people, then it's morally right to do. Thank you.
Floor is now open for rebuttal. You can start unmuting and asking questions.
Kavya, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned about the 9/11 attacks and also about other examples of individual cases. So the crime that has been committed, it can actually differ in the intensity. So I'm asking you, you've justified torture. So is there a particular scale which can measure the amount or intensity of torture that can be meted out to a person depending on the intensity of their crime? If you
The
justify
intensity of torture should be according to the intensity of the crime that they have done. So during 9/11 incident, the intensity of the crime was very huge. So George W. Bush had to take huge measures for that, which is the enhanced interrogation system.
I'm asking you, is there a particular measurement scale? Can we actually measure the intensity of the crime and then the intensity of the torture that has to be given? There is no particular, it's not something which is objective, right?
If it's a time-taking situation, like if a child is kidnapped and the location has to be found out immediately, then we have to take immediate action and we have to torture them, really well to get the information from them. So during situation, it depends.
Take this important decision regarding the intensity.
Shreya, could we move on though? Good question, but other speakers also. Rohan, you can ask your question.
My question is regarding the necessity of torture, especially following 9/11 and the war on terror, because most of the terror was conducted by the CIA. And of the 39 detainees that were present in the CIA facility during 2007, of the 39, only 7 were subjected to torture, and those 7 did not confess. The other 32 confessed without torture. And in an internal probe that followed shortly afterwards, the CIA found that its own methods were highly ineffective and did not deliver accurate information. So how can it be claimed that torture is an effective method of gathering information when the CIA itself found it to be so?
In many terrorist activities and like crime situations where someone is kidnapped or a bomb is being placed somewhere, without torture, many of the suspects would not even answer. So the police have to directly go into implementing torture to get out the information, because we have seen many cases in where the suspects do not even give information or answer to the questions. So they have to implement torture. Is your question clear?
Yes. Thanks.
Gautam, then go ahead.
Yes. Why should be torture used at all when it can be replaced by least time-consuming efforts such as pretending to be an ally or the use of psychology that has been used and also confirmed to be very effective by both the CIA, Mossad, and also by the MI6?
So what if it's a time-taking situation, like you have very little time and the decision has to be taken like immediately? You cannot sit and talk with them psychologically, but you have to take immediate actions, and torture is the only way.
CIA themselves have confirmed that torture is one of the most time-consuming efforts taken by them.
But psychological, what can we say? Persuading them psychologically takes more time than implementing torture. How can you say that implementing torture takes more time than persuading them psychologically? Sitting down and talking with the person and psychologically and trying to understand them is takes more time than torturing them.
I said this based on facts. The architect of CIA's torture program himself confirmed that the psychological approaches and pretending to be an ally has taken much less time and has been proven much effective.
But there are situations in which we have to, accept torture, because otherwise we will not be getting information of terrorists. There are several examples for that in India as well, where torture has been used, and only then we can get information.
Okay, just to clarify, as a general point in the debate itself, torture doesn't just have to be done by physical means. There is all kinds of torture, mental torture, that is like done, taking a long period of time. So just to put that out there. Okay, but yeah, we can move on.
Is that all? So judges, please note that was the end of chess number 2, speaker A and B. Now we'll be moving on to chess number 3, speaker A, Aditya Kishore.
The only thing that makes the present palatable is the fact that the past was at times torture. Torture by the government, which we elected, is needed in society for maintaining proper decorum in the whole country. It is used to obtain information on utilitarian grounds in specific circumstances where all other alternatives are ineffective. It is a necessary evil where we have to torture some to save many. The Bhagavad Gita mentions Lord Krishna saying to Arjuna, who was hesitant to fight against his unrighteous relatives, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyudhanam dharmasya tadadmam srijam yaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaicha dushkritam dharma sansthabhanarthai sambhavami yuge yuge. This translates to, whenever there is a decay of righteousness, for the protection of good, for the destruction of evildoers, I will fight against evil in every single way possible, and everything is fair in war. The judicial system has been notoriously slow for the last couple of years since history, and the use of extreme measures like this helps in providing quick justice. And we all know slow justice is justice denied. The people expect the government to protect them, and to do so, they have to carry out such extreme measures, lest things like 9/11 and 26/11 occur. The end justifies the means, and all's well that ends well. If you are able to do something good in the end, we have to go even down the hard way, and we have to do torture even if we don't want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Now the floor is open for a rebuttal session. Do any of the participants have questions? You can unmute and start asking.
Yes, Aditya, I had a question for you. In the very beginning of your speech, you mentioned that the government, which is elected by the representatives, they can commit torture. So I'm asking you, if I'm a citizen in your country where the government is justified, and I commit to torture another citizen, then will your government punish me? And if they do, then how are they authorized for that?
Yeah, so I think you forgot the question. That the main topic of the debate was torture conducted by the government is justifiable, not by other citizens of the country. So this is not applicable here, right?
Yes, I'm circling back to the same thing. You said that Yes, I am asking the same thing. You say that the torture which is conducted by the government, by the citizens, is not justifiable. Then what kind of law is it which gives special rights to a particular individual just because they are elected representatives of the people?
Yeah.
Is that actually justified? Is that actually justice?
No, just consider the thing. Why do we elect? Why this is a different one? Why do we elect the governments? We elect governments to keep us safe, to maintain decorum in the country, and maintain everything that's going on in the country. So if you expect the government to keep you safe and you don't expect them to protect you in all forms, then like a citizen doing torture is something entirely different from a government doing torture, because the government has been validated. So why do we have a military? Military kills. Why is some member of the military or soldier given the license to kill? Why is a spy given the license to kill? So why don't we just allow any single person to do it in the country?
Aditya, national security can also mean self-defense for the nation. So I'm asking you, you mentioned that for citizens, if they commit torture for self-defense, it is not justified. I am asking you the same question. How can it be correct for only a particular individual or group of individuals to do the same thing just because they are elected representatives?
Okay, thank you, Shreya, for that response. But we have other people also who have questions to ask. Thank you, though. Ayan or Gautam, you guys can go ahead if you wish to.
Aditya, I have a question for you. In 2011, Mr. Mitchell Jessen, who was the one of the architects of CIA's torture program, said that they went too far in the program when nobody was giving into the torture, and he thought that it was unnecessary. One of the people who were being tortured, Abu Zubaydah, tried to commit suicide more than 13 times. Only after 3 years, after CIA committed to psychological approaches, did Abu Zubaydah reveal information about locations and some of his allies. So, don't you think an effective route should be chosen instead of torture?
Yeah, so I like to give an analogy here. So you have heard of the polio vaccine, right? The polio vaccine against polio,
yes.
Right? Yeah, so the polio vaccine, even though it was supposed to remove polio completely, gave polio to an innumerable number of people. But still, did the government stop giving polio? No. Because what is the end cause? The end cause is that even if certain amount of people are getting polio, in the meantime, you are providing a great service for the people of the entire nation, for the entire world. And that's why we are living here. We are doing this debate today without polio. The same way, they have to try it. And another thing to do is that there's something known as torture warrants. The man who justified a ticking bomb theory, Mr. Dershowitz, he himself told that if you really want to do torture, you can do the level of torture warrants, which makes it more judicial and makes it more public. It's basically you are torturing with the permission of the people, with the permission of the judiciary system of the country.
As a reply to your analogy, for example, the polio vaccine itself, instead of hit and miss, there could have been an easy survival of a lot of people if the polio vaccine was efficient from the beginning.
That's actually not possible. This is a different topic. The polio vaccine they could not develop it, so it happens so, but they didn't still stop. People got polio still, and you can check online. There's a lot of things about that. People who do take other vaccines get autism. There's a small percentage of people who get those things, and you can't do that. It's nature's way of getting that. The same way you have to. That's what I told. The end justifies the means. So if they were able to stop terror to a certain extent, and if they were not able to cause 9/11 and 26/11 to not occur again, this means that they were successful in the end, and therefore their method and whatever they did on the way is justified.
Okay, thank you for that. 1 second. Jonathan, how are we for time?
This rebuttal session took a little 2 minutes extra, so it would be
So
good
we
if
should
we can
move
on to the next speaker. Yes.
All right, good. Yes, but excellent questions and responses, though. But let's move on.
Now I call upon chess number 3 speaker B, Rohan Deepu.
Good morning to all. I am of the opinion that torture is unjustified under any circumstances. From the Abu Ghraib prison in Baghdad to Guantanamo Bay, torture is one of the most common violations of a person's bodily integrity perpetrated by the state. In India, state-sanctioned torture is an underreported but common occurrence, especially in areas governed under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The links between the state's use of illegal force and the deterioration of the social order of the region are also remarkable. What's stopping a state from gunning down suspect terrorists in the streets when they don't shun away from dehumanizing and abusing suspects behind closed doors? False encounters, sham terrorist plots, and other despicable acts of state violence are accepted in mainstream media without even a hint of doubt about their veracity or efficacy. Why torture doesn't work? By neuroscientist Shane O'Mara, false memories may be instilled in the victims as memory centers of the brain are directly linked to stress response. Shane O'Mara is a neuroscientist, so this is actually a verified science. A study cited in the previously mentioned work had 2 people complete the task, where they were told to press a button trigger, which would fail the task. Those with simple sleep deprivation, just sleep deprivation, who didn't press the button, were 4.5 times more likely to sign a contract saying that they had pressed the button rather than the ones who did not have sleep deprivation. So the effect of actual torture, which is both physical and mental, will be exponentially greater than that and will lead to false convictions and false information. The CIA records show that of 39 detainees they had at one point, 7 yielded no intelligence enough to torture, while the others confessed without coercion. This also proves that torture does not actually form a stable base for interrogation or for information gathering, since the 32 who confessed would have confessed either way. They didn't need torture. And the 7 people who were tortured were a simple waste of resources rather than any noticeable or reliable source of information. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So you said that out of the 39 detainees, 32 confessed without any torture, and 7 were for like 32 confessed without any torture. But this is some sort of isolated case, right? There are many cases happening in which many do not confess right away because they do not want to confess. Like take a case in which a child has been kidnapped. He's kept in a box. He's buried in a box with 2 hours of oxygen. Just a case you consider, and imagine that it's your child. You are the head of the interrogation team. What will you do? Will you torture or not? You have 2 hours, just 2 hours.
In that case, emotions will override their response and some form of violent action will be taken.
Yeah, that's the point I would like to point out. So in that case, any government, let's be any government, when millions of people's lives are at stake, they will go for torture. They will interrogate them. Be it any country, they will interrogate them. So that's the point I would like to point out. Thank you.
But the thing with emotional responses is that you can't rely on actual stable heads of government to take on emotional responses. The reason we do not validate dictators is that they are prone to emotional responses. The reason we don't support Kim Jong-un or allow him to support him having nuclear arms is that emotional responses may cause global disasters.
You're
and
going way off
needs
topic
to
here,
function without any emotion in an efficient manner, which cares for each individual citizen's rights and liberties.
The point I like to make, I already made it right here now. So if there is the dictatorship, everything is way off the topic here. So
no, that is quite clear. So we can move on from
it. That's what I would like to say. I already made the point I would like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and just so that it's clear, please don't ad hominem your fellow contestants. That would be nice. Just try to keep it here.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Yeah, go for it.
So you just said that you give more importance to actual proof than emotional stability. Like just take a case of parents and a child has been kidnapped. Would they actually go for proof, or would they just wander about trying to find the guy who just kidnapped their child? Emotional connections have really a good value in this in a democratic country like India. So as far as national security is concerned, torture is the first option that you go for. How do you justify that?
With emotional response coming into government, you are descending into the realm of demagogism, where masses' feelings are being valued over actual facts. And the thing with parents responding to kidnapping, that's a very small thing. That's also quite cinematic, because the police, when they're responding to these kinds of things, they will actually have information, they will have leads, they will have clues. And parents aren't actually going to do any of that. They won't have the links with the criminal underworld who are involved in human trafficking, and they won't have any of the resources to pursue these leads either. So the actual useful work being done is being done by the government, which is a functional and efficient entity which is meant to exist without emotion.
I just want to add one point that could support my talk. Actually, when parents are under the emotional impact, the police or the interrogation team who is in charge of that kidnap case gets really that adds up or complements their strength of such. So that finally, let's say that they found out the kidnapper. Wouldn't this emotional status of the parents lead to torture of that criminal, and wouldn't he actually deserve it because he was not supposed to kidnap the kid?
Punishments are supposed to be meted out by actual qualified professionals, and that's why we have judges. That's why we used to have they're meant to be meted out by actual qualified professionals in law rather than emotional responses. by that you could say that people harassing doctors because their relatives died is also acceptable, but it isn't. They had a loss and they can have emotional response, but that's fair. That's a battery. You can persecute them for that.
Yes, of course. That's what I'm saying. So parents, it's not that parents are giving out some kind of a punishment to the criminal. It's the police only. But then this emotional impact does complement the interrogation search.
Here, let's keep going. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Rohan said that there is a chance of false convictions of suspects. So just because of the possibility of false convictions, can we not torture people? Because during time constricting situations, we have to get information no matter what.
False convictions are actually something to worry about, especially when you're putting people on death row. So there was a statistic released from the US, but still it's quite valid, that about 10% of the people who are actually on death row will be proven innocent before they are sent to death, and that's because it takes years and years to get the execution approved. So if it was an instant process, like if they were being killed on the spot, 10% of the people would be innocent who were being killed.
I didn't talk about getting them killed or
no, it was false convictions. So false convictions are actually something to worry about, especially with terrorists. Terrorists can be executed.
Yes, but in time constricting conditions like terrorist attacks, if just because of the possibility of false convictions, we cannot, government cannot sit back and tie their hands and sit simply. They have to take immediate action.
They have to take proactive action, but proactive action doesn't need to be torture. They just go after the criminals. They can capture them, and then prosecute them in a timely process. And then, as proven before, torture isn't actually a really valid or useful method of getting information, and it isn't even proven to be effective. So why torture then, rather than actually just ask them about the information, put them into custody and all that?
Do you think terrorists will,
okay. I think again we push for time a little bit. If you guys can keep an eye on that timer, I think that would be really wonderful. Is that right, Jonathan? Do we have any more time to spare for one more question, or should we?
I don't think so, because right now we'll be having a break for 2 minutes, so we can resume the remaining 2 teams after 2 minutes.
That sounds good to me.
So we'll be running ads for this period.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Can I say something? You could prevent time if the cross-questioning part was avoided. For one question, 3 more questions are asked after.
Right. I was okay with one more follow-up to clarify. But then, it is getting a little bit out of hand. So let's try to do something. One question, a response. If the response wasn't clear, a very short clarification question, not an additional point or anything like that, just to get a good idea of the response, not another response. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
But I'd like to just take this opportunity to say this has been quite interesting, actually. And again, I am not a big fan of time constraints and things like that, but the quality of debate has been impressive given the constraints. So good job on that, all of you.
We can continue with our schedule now. Judges, please note, chess number 3 just finished. We'll be moving on to chess number 4. Speaker A, Vishwa Kalyan Reddy. You may begin.
In 1995, a Pakistani terrorist, Abdul Hakim Murad, was tortured in the Philippines, where he revealed information about a terrorist conspiracy which was a precursor to the 9/11 attacks. Respected members of the jury and my fellow debaters, I'm S. Vishwa Kalyan Reddy, speaking for the topic, torture is justified when performed by governments in the name of national security. According to the 1984 UN Convention, torture is any act causing severe physical or mental pain or suffering intentionally inflicted on a person to extract information or a confession from him or a third person. Why do countries resort to torturing suspects? The main reason is that many do not have access to the latest forms of technology. All countries which have access to technology put it to use as a torture alternative, and torture is usually a last resort. It is true that torture causes emotional damage and PTSD, but we are talking about national security, a situation in which no chances can be taken. Try all of the methods of gleaning information, but not one widespread method is found to be 100% effective. When it comes to a stage where torture is unavoidable, hesitation should never come up. A single person's sanity must be risked at that point in order to save the lives of 1 million other people. According to Alan Dershowitz, the tragic reality is that torture sometimes works, much though many people wish it did not. Hence, we cannot ignore the fact that torture works. The future looks promising, with technology mitigating the need for torture. Till we attain a world where every part has access to advanced, more effective alternatives to torture, torture is unavoidable. Hence, in our present situation, we can definitely say that torture by governments in the name of national security is justified. And with these words, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwa. Now, do any of the participants have any questions? Judges?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Please.
Okay, my question is quite simple. How can you justify the government when they use torture as a means for their selfish needs and for their evil, selfish plans? How can you justify that?
We are talking about national security here, and we mean terrorists and those people who pose a threat to millions of people. And when they are tortured, and it is for a reason, because they don't take any chances. A single chance could lead to the destruction of 1 million lives.
Yes, but that is not my question. My question is, how can you justify it when the government use torture as a means for their selfish needs? There are various cases when they use it for their selfish needs to shut up people. How can you justify that?
We're talking about national security here, not about cases where they torture people for various other reasons and citing small reasons and taking them to the gallows to torture them. So this does not pertain much to the topic that we are discussing here in the debate.
No, they're glorifying it by stating that it is for national security.
Let's move on. Yes, but thank you, Masina. Any other questions?
May I ask something?
Yes, please.
There is actually a modern alternative to torture. It's called digital monitoring. China is quite a famous example of this. Many channels are monitored. The companies who run these social media platforms and channels are in leagues with the government. They will make sure that anything that violates the filters is reported to the government. So this is actually quite efficient, considering it's actually information that people are providing without the knowledge that they are being monitored. So it will be a proper convictable piece of information rather than something that's being revealed while people are getting nails embedded under their actual nails.
Indeed, there are different better methods, but the thing is, do all countries have access to it? That's what I've been saying throughout this speech.
They do.
All countries do.
Yeah.
And are they using
without a fragment of doubt that all countries do?
Are you sure about that? Because there can be many places where they have not still been developed, like economically backward countries. How would they access such, such means in order to, what do you say? How would they have the finance to access such means in order to investigate criminals? They wouldn't have all sorts of resources in order to buy such, in order to obtain such resources from other areas. So you can't be sure that every single place has this thing. There is always going to be an exception, and torture is going to be prevalent in that area.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Ayan, and if we have time, then Shreya.
Yeah, so your entire argument is based around that. So not all countries have access to as developed torture methods as some countries do. So they have to resort to torture. That's your argument.
Yeah.
So the lives of people in lesser developed countries is just is of less worth. So they don't feel the same pain that the people in higher developed countries do. So it's wrong in higher developed countries where, yes, you can use other methods, but in lesser developed countries, it's fine because the people don't feel pain. Is that your argument?
In lesser developed countries, what means do they have? They have no other option.
So
if you can give them methods,
then it
you
must
can.
be a norm for everyone. So then you must be fine with hurting people.
So would you rather risk a life of one person in a lesser developed country in order to no, would you save the life of a single person in a lesser developed country to risk the lives of 1,000 other citizens in the same country? That is my question. They have no other means.
Essentially, you're saying that the inefficacy of the government should be borne by the people. So the government
economic problems. And
no,
that's the problem of the world. That should be a solved thing.
Sorry, it's a matter of.
I think it's quite clear. I understand. Yeah. But I think we should be moving on now.
Yeah.
Jonathan, how are we for time?
We're running a little late on schedule, so we should move on quicker.
Yes, let's.
It would be appreciated if you would stick to the topic and ask related questions. So now we'll be moving on to chess number 4, speaker B, Gautam S. Nair.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah, you can.
Yes, yeah, go for it.
The rack, the brazen bull, and the fear of anguish are all torture devices we have read about and probably had nightmares about. The nightmares are not about the machines, but about the pain itself. Respected members of the jury and my fellow debaters, my name is Gautam S. Nair, and I'm standing before you to speak against the notion that torture can be justified if national interest is involved. Torture is the way of inflicting extreme levels of physical and mental stress to criminals as a way of extracting information. According to the Torture Convention adopted by the UN in 1984, it was deemed as a grave transgression of human rights. It has been clearly stated that no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, may be invoked as a justification of torture. Experienced interrogators and intelligence experts such as Shane O'Mara say that torture is not an effective way to extract information, as it is extremely time-consuming, has very low success rates, and can result in people lying and hurting themselves to escape torture. Torture can be replaced by easier and much more effective methods such as the polygraph and the lie detector test. The use of artificial intelligence in these fields has led to the development of devices such as the eye detect, which has an accuracy rate of 98 to 99%. That other 1% can be easily covered by the micro-expression reading computer developed by the Mossad in 2017, which has a 100% efficiency rate and has spread all over to the special agencies by 2022. The CIA and the Mossad have confirmed that posing as an ally and the use of hypnosis as a much more effective way for extracting information about targets and locations. Torture just remains to be an example of the horrific and inefficient ways used by our ancestors from which we have to learn. I rest my case.
Yeah, so I got a question.
Go ahead.
First of all, human rights. You talked about human rights in which, so, okay, you said that torture cannot be justified in any case, be it a war, be it a terrorist attack, anything. So human rights. So will the decent people of any country consider the human rights of a person who tortured millions of people and who is going to torture millions of people? So will you consider the human rights of that person? Many innocent people are going to die. You're going to say human rights when we are going to torture that person to get the information to save the lives of innocent people. Human rights for a criminal, for a terrorist who is going to kill millions of people. Thank you.
Okay. When ethics are out of the question, when it's a terrorist who has mass murdered people, it's about efficiency and not about ethics. And when efficiency comes into play, torture is out of the question because it takes a extremely long time as compared to lie detectors, polygraphs, and even posing as an ally to gather information. So a much better option is to use other means other than torture.
Okay, so
as it is much more effective and less time consuming.
Not clear. Your other method is lie detector. So okay, what if the lie detector says he's lying? He's not given the right information. He's lying. But he's not given the right information. What will you do then? He's lying. The lie detector says he's lying. So what
I think
will you
we
do?
can move on.
So my question.
There only the torture is there. So that's it.
Can I ask a
Thank you.
question?
Okay, Aditya, that I get it.
A small question.
Yeah, no, Aditya, you can go ahead, please.
Yeah, so you mentioned about a lot of different kinds of technology, and I'm a computer guy, so I know no computer is 100% right. So that's the first thing that you're wrong there itself. No computer is 100% right. Whatever models you run, you will never get 100%. Even nature is against computers. A single gamma ray will change your computer's bit by almost anything you want, and you can get errors there. Second thing, the right to all the technology you mentioned are actually invasion of privacy. And India itself mentions that right to privacy is now a right to protect against torture. You can check the Times of India news. It's there. It's still there. And also, polygraphs are never admissible in court. Even in India, right now, the Supreme Court does not allow any kind of polygraph test at court. So how do you go against this?
This is where experienced psychologists and other criminal experts come into play. Torture can be replaced by these much effective methods. Torture shouldn't be the final answer for gathering information.
Okay, and also like you're telling about more. So people know that now they're using psychological movements to find out whether you are doing something wrong. Now, what they do? Why is Mossad? Why is CIA? Why is all the other security agencies being trained for withstanding torture? The same way, all these terrorist agencies are also training their people or training their agents to withstand torture or withstand all kind of psychological moves. So, how do you justify that? How do you psychologically break a person if they're training for not psychologically breaking themselves?
I think we can move on right now because
yes, we can.
Yeah. So judges, please note that was the end of chess number 5. We'll be moving on to chess number. We'll be moving on to chess number 5 now. Speaker A, Advait.
So am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So a very warm good morning to one and all. Respected panel of judges and fellow debaters. My name is Advait S. I'm from Law School and I'm talking for the topic. So national security and assurance of the public safety are direct responsibilities of the state that should be prioritized over all else. Torture, while certainly not the preferred method of gathering critical information, is ethically justifiable as a means of protecting the security and interests of the citizens of a country when no other suitable method is available. When specific circumstances arise and all other alternatives are ineffective, then torture can be justified. We must choose a solution that yields the greatest benefit to the majority. This statement is justified by the ticking bomb scenario. It is a situation in which the lives of countless civilians are at stake, and torture of one criminal can be justified in that case because it leads to a reduction in the equal suffering of torture of the many, especially when those individuals have committed no such crime. Alan Dershowitz, he's a well-known criminal defense lawyer. He brought the ticking time bomb theory back to life in a series of his work after the 9/11 terror attacks. He says that torturing one guilty terrorist to prevent the deaths of 1,000 innocent civilians will not shock the conscience of all decent people of the country. He assures that the reader doing so certainly would not, in order to prove that, he certainly would not tell the reader to think of a situation in which young child has been kidnapped. He's buried in a box with 2 hours of oxygen. So torturing that guy, will it shake the conscience of a group of people in the same country? Do you think that it will shake the conscience? Because everyone wants to save the innocent child, right? As anyone wants to save a criminal. One might also argue that choosing to do nothing is the most morally correct option, as doing nothing removes personal fault from the results. This is not the case, however. Opting to do nothing is not an option when the security of the entire nation is at stake. If a person disagrees to disclose some information to the government, then it shows that he is guilty. So torture applied towards a law-breaking criminal for the sake of protecting the innocent is justifiable. With these words, I rest my case. Thank you.
Now, any of the participants can ask one question to the speaker.
Yes, I have a question for you. You mentioned about national security cases and their terrorist attacks to count. So what if the government has used torture upon the terrorist attackers, and there has been previous examples, where because of the torture that has been meted out to them, they have returned in higher number and greater quantities, which has proven to be a greater threat on national security. So doesn't that torture actually act as a stimulus for a greater threat upon national security. So how can that torture be justified?
You're saying that when a person is tortured, another group of people, like it acts as a stimulus and more danger comes on to us. So we should take a risk then. I think you're saying that we should take a risk. Like we have a person in our hand.
You mentioned
Oh, no, like, let me give you a reply. Like we have a person in our hand who can save that, who can save the, who can save the attack that is going to be there. Like a person, you said that it acts as a stimulus for the attack to take place, but we can prevent it. This person in a hand has the valid information for us to prevent the attack. So we should torture them.
You mentioned in your speech very clearly that we cannot risk the life of thousands of people just because we want to save the life of one person. This is a very similar analogy. We cannot risk the life of the people, a greater number of people, just because we want to save the lives of a smaller number of people right now.
Okay, then you suggest an alternative. That's all I can say. Suggest an alternative. What will you do? If you have a person in your hand, what will you do?
I am asking you.
Okay, I think we can move on now. Sorry to interrupt, but let's move on.
Yeah. Now we'll have speaker B, Ayan A. Haq.
Okay. That is the last speaker for the day.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Ayan Haq, and I'm speaking against the topic. The word torture by law means the action or practice of inflicting severe pain or suffering on someone as a punishment or in order to force them to do or say something. The word and its definition in and itself goes against what the justice system is, what a government is supposed to be, and what modern society is. A modern government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people should not be allowed to take away its citizens' rights, their freedom, and their safety in the name of national security. Never can a system be allowed to hurt people due to its own inefficacy. Torture is a complete and full degradation of civil liberties and rights that a government promises every single citizen. Torture it's not just taking away their rights, it's a tool that's capable of destroying people's entire lives. It brings so much of effect on a person's life. It not only causes short-term physical damage, but also long-term psychological effects and damage on the individual's way of life and his integrity. All of which are ideas that a democracy always strives to protect. A system that uses torture as a tool can never claim to be a good system. If we follow Kant's theory of deontology, something as vile and repugnant as torture is never good. In simpler terms, it's what the villain does. It's not what the good guys do. And the system knows this fact too. That's why that's why the system never explicitly tells you a person has been tortured. I mean, you know he's been tortured, but you don't know. I've heard a lot of speakers quoting 9/11 in today's debate, and in 9/11, out of 119 of the known detainees, 26 were wrongfully accused. That's 26 lives that were messed up just because of the system's inefficacy. And this is a system that claims to be the greatest system in the world. Mexico, Morocco, Nigeria, Uzbekistan, China, Egypt, the USA, all these are just some of the countries where torture is known to be used as a frequent tool. But hey, those are just stats, right? There's always a greater good. No one cares about the countless lives that are being taken away in the process. My friends, torture is one of the most vile and disgusting things that a person or a system can inflict on another being. It cannot ever be justified in any manner, especially when it's in the name of national security. That's my argument. Thank you for listening.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes, sure. Go ahead.
You said that a system can never be good if it implements torture. Yeah. So let me just ask a question. As I said earlier in my speech, let's just take a rape case or a women deflecting kind of a case. So if the government decides to just leave the criminal without any torture, then would you justify the act of the government to be a good one? Because the criminal...
No, I wouldn't have to judge the government because the justice system is in place to punish the criminal. If the criminal is... There's a reason why Lady Justice is blind. She doesn't listen to emotions. She listens to fact. And if fact proves that the person is guilty, then he's punished. So I trust myself completely in the hands of the law. That's why I sleep sound at night, because I know the law is protecting me.
Okay, fine. Then just to say the woman is being killed, raped and killed brutally. And then the criminal who actually did it, doesn't he or she deserve the exact same act to be done on her?
Can we move on though to the next question? But like question is noted, but yeah, short for time. Yeah, Kavya, go for it.
Okay. So Ayan spoke about human rights, that human rights are being violated when torture takes place. So why should we consider the human rights of a person who is a recognized criminal or a recognized wrongdoer?
Because he's a human before he's a criminal.
Yeah,
The government always promises human rights. That's to the citizen, not just a criminal or a terrorist or a normal citizen. It's not a normal citizen, it's the people. That's a collective.
Okay, so this person who is the criminal did not consider the human rights of several other people.
Because he's not the government, he's a terrorist. He doesn't have to consider it. He doesn't have any moral ramifications. He's a criminal for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So why does the government has to consider his human rights?
Because the government is the government, because they promise rights and freedoms. See, you can't equate or compare a government to a terrorist. They're different completely in all aspects. How do you compare the both of them? But the simple reason that I differentiate the two of them is the criminal doesn't care. The government is supposed to. So the government will care and the criminal won't. All the government
because
can
the government cares, the government has to torture the person because he's a criminal. He's recognized.
No, see, that's your wrong. The government doesn't have to torture him. The government shouldn't torture him. He has to punish him. There's a difference between torture and punishment.
All right, let's move on. Next question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said like torture should not be a thing, but what about countries which have no option? What about economically backward countries? They have no way of obtaining technology.
You're wrong in assuming that. So you're talking about
no technology is 100% accurate.
You're talking about a barbaric country then. So torture is a final option. Should be a.
Are you talking about economically backward countries as barbaric?
No, you said that in these countries the final option should be torture. So you're saying these countries are
a last resort, like in case all technological cases fail.
So what should you saying? This country is not even technologically advanced to just find a criminal and punish him, but they resort to torturing him. So yeah, that's a barbaric.
Yeah, they have no other option.
I'm not saying an economic backward country.
Okay, folks, could you stop interrupting each other? That would be wonderful if you could stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, Vishwa, you can kind of rephrase your question just once and a very quick response from Ayan, and we'll move on.
Okay, I'm talking about the two cases, technology and economically backward. These two are cases which can fail anytime. Economically backward countries may not have access to the best technology, and also technology fails. And what if all these fail? You have only one last option, which is torture. And what would you do then?
Vishwa, I'm saying torture should never be the last option. I'm saying that torture should not even be an option. I'm saying that even if it is a technologically or economically backward country, the people's rights, their liberties and their safety matters there too. So torture should not even be on the list of things that you give priority to. That's my argument.
So would you rather they were left alone?
Thank you, Vishwa. Aditya, your question.
So my question is, you mentioned some states which are doing torture against their own citizen. So my notion is that what is a nation? A nation is the people, not the land where the people live. It's the people of the country. So a nation's security is the security of its own people, and therefore countries like China, Afghanistan, other dictatorial countries cannot be even considered as countries which are doing national security. They are doing what the dictators are doing, or what the bureaucracy wants to do. However, countries like India, USA, or other countries, maybe any other country you check. So yeah, so if you are allowing another person to hurt a citizen of your country, isn't that a violation of the right of the person who is being hurt? Okay, so you want to protect that person, right? The person who's being hurt. A terrorist is hurting a citizen of your country. Isn't by not doing anything against the person who is doing that, aren't you violating the rights of the person who is being hurt, who is the victim?
My entire argument and the point that I want to make clear is I'm not saying the terrorist should go unhurt. I'm saying he should not be tortured. That's the difference. And the thing is, yes, of course, the citizen's right. He has a right to life. He has a right to safety. But the criminal doesn't care. That's why he's branded as a criminal. So when you say the word criminal, you should know the definition to it. He does not care. He doesn't need to know what is right.
So basically, at the end of the entire system on which the entire modern world is built is wrong. And therefore, you have to change the entire thing ground up, because we are giving the government the right to kill, but the criminals, we do not give the government is not given the right to do something against criminals, but the criminals have the right to do anything there.
Criminals don't have the right, man. That's why they're criminals. That's why they're caught and punished. If they had the right, they would walk away scot-free every time. They're criminals for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
So with this, we have reached the end of our debate competition. I thank all the participants and judges for their presence and cooperation in this event. And thank you all.
Yeah. Jonathan, do we have enough time to like few minutes to spare to like, I don't know, talk to them?
We can talk, but the stream we have to end it soon.
Oh, okay. All right then. Okay.
Have you taken a picture of all the contestants with their video on?
One second. Ma'am. Yeah, done.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.